Game changers, game changers. Welcome to At the Desk with Dr. Qua, where transformation begins with conversation. Today, we're focused on an essential and often overlooked piece of scholar success meeting social emotional needs. My guest, Mrs. Patricia King-Gibbs, is the Director of Student Services for Plainfield Public Schools, leading district wide SEL, mental health, and scholar support initiatives. A licensed social worker with 25 years or more plus years of experience, she is committed to equity, whole child development, and strong school family partnership. Ooh, I'm stumbling. She holds a master's degree for social work from Yeshiva University and has served in multiple leadership roles, advancing scholar wellness, success, and helping them navigate challenges that affect not only learning, but overall well being. Together, we will explore the obstacles, the opportunities, the strategies schools can use to support the whole child. Mrs. Patricia King Gibbs, welcome to At the Desk with Dr. Qua.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, look at Patty. So I'm going to tease her a little bit, right? So just for transparency, Patty and I used to work together back in the day.
Yeah.
It's been a minute, and I think since my departure, she has since risen in the ranks. So she's a big deal now. Was always a big deal, but big deal with some capital behind it now. That's all I'm gonna say. Anything for our audience, Pat?
I'm sorry, did you say anything for our audience?
Yes.
I didn't
Anything you
understand.
want to say to them before we get going?
Well, actually, I do want to say that I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to share my experience
Mm-hmm.
working with students, social emotionally, mental health, and I'm happy to be able to have this opportunity. So I welcome this conversation.
All right, all right. So as a colleague, back in the day, we used to talk a lot about just our scholars and the
Yes.
multitude of challenges they presented. Right. So in
hmm
thinking about them, from your perspective, what are some of the most pressing social emotional needs that they're facing in schools today?
Well, it's a difficult time for many of our students. Many of our students suffer from anxiety, self harm, the fact that a lot of resources are limited. It makes it difficult for our students to receive those resources. Many are suffering from social isolation, um, being in situations where not only are they being bullied or cyberbullied, which is a problem because of their connection with social media.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's different, like, back in our day, so to speak, if you were dealing with bullying, it kind of stopped at school.
Right.
But now that you have social media, they are exposed to that consistently. They don't really get a
Mm.
break. So that really becomes an issue for many of our students. Some of our students are suffering from depression as well. Many of our students, in terms of their life at home, they're struggling with certain things economically. This current climate is not helping in
Mm-hmm.
regards to the amount of stress that our students are feeling when they enter the building. So there
Right.
are quite a few issues that they're dealing with on a regular basis that we see.
Wow. So that gives us the big picture, right? And
Mhm.
you and I talked earlier. And tomorrow, they'll across the country. I think the
Mhm.
bulk of scholars are walking onto school campuses tomorrow.
Mhm.
Recently, there was a shooting in Minneapolis. So I know that some of our scholars have heard about it. They've seen the news, right? So they're coming into school already with some degree of anxiety. You have
Yes.
parents who are probably nervous prepping their children for tomorrow, uh,
Mhm.
concerned about just can this happen in my child's school, right?
Mhm.
And so these are challenges, but what are the biggest barriers schools face in consistently addressing these challenges? and SEL related dynamics that are often at play?
Well, a barrier in addressing these challenges is many times people think that you shouldn't talk about it, and that's the worst thing that you can do. When supporting students who are anxious about things like school shootings, it's important to acknowledge their fears, to keep routines predictable, clearly communicate safety measures,
Mm-hmm.
build strong relationships, offer calming spaces and trauma informed strategies. These are the things that we need to build around students when they're coming in with that kind of anxiety, especially around something as serious as a school shooting. And as well, communicate to the parents, offer
Mm-hmm.
them support as well, because it's quite terrifying to you send your child to school and the possibility of them not coming home,
Yeah,
raises anxiety in anybody. So it is
absolutely.
important for us to really address it and to share with students that we're really here to support you and to wrap around those services around our students. And what can happen as a barrier is that, you know, when you're starting school, there are so many different things that you have to do and address. And
Yep.
sometimes this type of support gets kind of lost in the shuffle.
Mm. Mm. So,
So
so
that's,
the role of social workers and school counselors becomes that much more paramount, right?
mm-hmm.
And so I know that when we worked together, there was a period of time when it was just you as a sole
Yes,
social worker. And
yes.
if we were lucky, we had a school counselor, or
Mhm.
some places you have a school counselor, but not a social worker. But
Right.
you also have 500 plus kids.
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
the expectation is that somehow, by some miracle, the one individual, even those two individuals, by and large, are responsible for that social emotional support that's needed. What
Hmm.
role do you see for practitioners to step up their game? Because, after all, if I'm in the classroom, I ain't no social worker. You get on my doggone nerves. I need to send you to see Mrs. King-Gibbs, right?
There
Go to
needs
the
to be a
office.
yeah. Yes, that's exactly correct. Um, and that there needs to be a shift in thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Gone are the days where teachers are just there to, you know, educate you with academics. That's a piece of it. But
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to relate to a child and to provide that social emotional learning for a student.
Mm.
So, as you stated, um, teachers is like, well, I'm not a social worker. If there's an issue, I'm gonna send them down, which you used to say all the time, you're giving away your power because
Mm-hmm.
you're sending a student down to me with a behavioral issue, you're not addressing it at all, you have no relationship or no control of that environment because you just gave it away to somebody else.
Absolutely.
So, I would say it would be best practice for teachers to start to incorporate social emotional learning on what we have a kind of a tiered level, like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And tier 1 is something that everybody can do. It's something that doesn't even take 15 minutes, but it's built on relationships. And
Absolutely.
if they could understand how important that is as part of educating a child, because we're
Mm-hmm.
not we're putting our children to be part of our society, right? So
Oh,
we
all
want
day.
them completely whole. You can't just have them with, oh, they have this knowledge, this academic knowledge, and then that social emotional part, that
Hmm.
emotional intelligence is not
Mm.
touched. How many people do you know that unnecessarily be in a work environment? They can be the smartest person ever, but they don't know how to work collaboratively with
Mm-mm.
anyone, and
Mm-mm.
they don't
Oh, too
become
many.
successful.
Too many.
Okay. Well, you understand what I'm saying. It's vitally important if we're going to put out, so to speak, as a product, okay? Students who are able to function totally and be successful in society. They need
So,
that
but
SEL.
here's the challenge, though, and I think this is one of the things that goes to the heart of why a lot of practitioners, their first intonation is, um, I'm not a social worker. Training,
Mm-hmm.
training, training, PD, professional development. It can't be one and done.
Oh yes,
That
that's
is
my
one of the things that used to drive me bonkers because it's
yes.
like, okay, we need this, and you're fighting everybody to get what we need because
Right.
folks don't see that as an
Mm-hmm.
important component to establishing that classroom rapport that will give you the opportunity to really connect with scholars and all of those things and mitigate some of the challenges that happens in the classroom.
Right.
But that PD, talk to me about how you see that in terms of just helping practitioners step up or elevate their presence in the SEL realm.
Well, I see, especially social workers.
Mm.
If you're fortunate enough to have a social worker in your school,
Hmm.
they are well equipped to provide professional development for your
Okay.
staff. And I feel that it should be part of the regular Monday meetings. I
Mm-hmm.
know normally we
Mm.
have four um, meetings, Monday meetings. One of those should be devoted to SEL.
Okay.
Um, there is a lot of information and even programs that can
Mm.
help teachers learn SEL and implement those practices in class. You even
Okay.
have some programs that provide uh, classroom models and classroom activities so teachers can follow without them having to even figure out what to do. I mean, because it becomes
You're
difficult.
venturing into a space right now that might bring back some traumatic moments for your boy here. Okay, because I believe we tried something along these lines. You laughing a
I
little
know,
too hard.
I know, I know. But I'm saying
And the
it
pushback.
is important.
Whoo.
I know you're gonna get pushback, but it is so vitally important. And if teachers are able to really see how it can help them, because
Mm.
oftentimes, they have a lot. I'm not gonna
Oh, without
say that
question.
teachers don't have a lot of responsibilities. They have a lot of responsibilities. And administrators need to make time within their schedule and day to be able to provide this resource. So I feel that it's important that it's not just teachers, it's everyone in the building,
Right from the.
administrators, bus drivers,
Yep.
lunchroom attendants,
Mm-hmm.
security. Everyone needs to be trained in SEO because that's the only way you're going to move the climate and culture of your building if everybody
Absolutely.
participates.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
training is definitely necessary.
So with that, right? I'm not going to go into the trauma zone. You mentioned creating a schedule to make that happen. I think we did that. But even
Hmm.
with that, it was like
Hmm.
fisticuffs, right? Well,
Yes.
all you had to do just supervise scholars, engage them. You didn't have to
Hmm.
think about the plans, blah blah blah. But
Hmm.
again, I got it. I get it. The structure of the school sometimes.
Hmm.
First of all, you don't have enough time in the day. Let's start
That's
there, right?
right. Right.
And you've alluded to the fact that there is a lot on not just teachers' plates. Everybody in the building dealing with children. There's always way more than one should be managing on any given
Hmm.
day on anybody's
Hmm.
plate. So I get that. I will give them that. I will give all the uh, educators in the field that, right? But we have to
Yes.
figure that piece out. How do we
Right.
do it without it infringing on my prep, my lunch,
Right.
my whatever else is in the equation, right? We
Right.
That's something that I think all institutions need to figure out how to make that a part of just the the climate so that we are all in on the same accord so that we can kind of row our boats in the same
Right.
direction, so to speak, to make sure that
Yeah.
we are positioning ourselves for success, our scholars for success, in terms of behavior, in terms of academics, and of course, making them the most well prepared and sound individual for our global world. Because these kids are
Yeah.
going to be the same ones that we're going to be looking to take care of us. I want to make sure
You
they're coming correct.
No, but that's a point, you know. I've been fortunate enough to been in the field for a while, and I've gone to doctors' offices, and I've
Mm-hmm.
seen some of our former students that are there, you know, working and relating to people, and you know, of course, they remember you and all of that. But I think people really need to realize that we're preparing these students to carry on, and they will be the ones that we will have to depend on for many things.
Mm-hmm.
So when
Mm-hmm.
you think about that, what kind of person do you want
Taking
to
care of you.
assist you? Right, right. What kind of individual? You know, so really it becomes vitally important, not just for our students, but even thinking of ourselves in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the larger picture of society. So you have to put in that time to develop these skills with our students. And I have to say, some of these skills need to be developed in our adults as well.
Oh, don't worry. I was getting to that because
Okay.
some of us need some space for growth.
Yeah,
Space for growth. Yes.
absolutely.
So as we're talking about this, right, the question that comes to mind is how can schools ensure that their SEL programs are indeed culturally responsive, right, and afford scholars voice?
I think what's important about that piece is that our teachers and our staff really have to understand that you need to be familiar with a child's culture. You need to be able to have pictures or events or holidays or have children express
Mm-hmm.
what they bring to the school from their culture. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important for you to do a little bit of investigation. You may not know, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you can take the time to do just a little bit of research, have a little bit of a conversation with a student about a particular holiday that they particularly
Right.
celebrate, or some of the attire, or even the music. I mean, that applies to not only children that may not be, you know, from this country, but let's even say the music that your students
Mm.
listen to. I'm not
Yes.
saying you have to enjoy it, but look at it as a research project.
But
You
also show
really need to
interest.
understand. Right. So
Right.
you really have to be well, to show interest, you have to first of all have a little bit of knowledge on it, or
Mm-hmm.
even ask a question so that they can be engaged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think those practitioners who tend to be more successful with their scholars and
Mhm.
oftentimes mitigate those disruptive behaviors are the
Mhm.
ones who embrace the different cultures in the setting, the ones who incorporate the
That's
different
right.
cultures into their instructional presentations, right?
Mhm.
Because if I see me in there, okay, I get to sit up a little taller, stick my chest.
Yes.
Okay, they talk about my people, right? Or
Yes.
if it's a that I like or sports or whatever the case might be, right? And I think
Right.
again, this goes back to that building a rapport and establishing
Mhm.
that environment where scholars are not afraid to be who they are, right? And
Yes.
I think that's critically important. That's powerful. But let's shift towards some solutions and best practices, right?
Okay.
Because I also want to kind of bring us back to, well, I'm going to take us somewhere else, but just as you've been in this role and in this field for the number of years that you've been in, what are
Mhm.
some of the best practices and strategies that you've seen make the most impact within schools?
Well, definitely, as we stated before, and I can't state this enough, is the relationship building piece. Um, if teachers are, as I said, allowed or even think to begin to understand where a student is coming from, if you are beginning the school year, let's just take that,
Mm-hmm.
have a little questionnaire. Ask students about themselves. What do they like? What do they listen to? What do they watch? And you have that for your class, and then you gather that information so you know a little bit about your students,
Mm-hmm.
as well as you share something that's respectfully about yourself. You know, don't share all of your problems or anything
That's
like
that human touch because
that.
oftentimes our scholars don't see us as humans. They
Exactly.
see you in the store and they're shocked, like, you shop? Wait, you
Exactly.
eat at the restaurant? Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Like I am a human. Yes. Yeah,
Yes,
you're absolutely
yes.
right. But when those particular teachers practice that on a regular basis, they begin to see a shift in their class. Their students
Mm-hmm.
feel like they belong. Their students feel like, okay, this is like my school family. When
Right.
students, come back to school, they're very excited because oftentimes they're excited to, meet with their friends, right?
Of course.
Right. And it's because they have that relationship with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
But if they develop a relationship with their teachers, they'll be excited to go to that particular class. They'll
Absolutely.
be excited to become involved in the school culture. So it's important that we create that. So for me, that's a successful intervention, so to speak, is
Mm-hmm.
when teachers begin the year, because it's important. School is starting tomorrow. It's
Yeah.
important to begin the year with getting to know your students in that way, in that format. So
So
I feel that's extremely important.
absolutely. That is a very important piece. My apologies for cutting you off.
No worries.
The other thing that I want to talk about, while we're focusing on scholars, we can't forget the adults, right? Because yes, social emotional learning, it has an impact on scholars, but it also has an impact on adults.
Yes, it
We
does.
come with our own luggages. I can't even just say baggage. A few
Right.
luggages, some of us, right? That
Right.
we walk into the building with. And
Yes.
so making sure that you're centered in a way that allows you to be able to recognize the scholar sitting in front of you's uh, challenges and dynamics so that you can be a value add in terms of helping them, right? So,
Mhm.
what can the practitioners and the adults in the building do to make sure that they are okay, right? So that they can do the job that we are asking and expecting of them to do.
This can be a difficult task for many
Mm-hmm.
adults in the building. And I would beg that the social workers could help them with this. They really have to become self aware. And it's very difficult for people to become aware of their own issues. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes I see it played out when teachers are interacting with students.
Okay.
I've seen situations where, um, a student may have done something wrong, and of course they send them out to the office, and then I work with the student, and then I get the student ready. Okay, now you're ready to talk to that teacher and apologize, and let's repair. Right? What's what
Mm-hmm.
happened? And the teacher takes that moment to just re-injure the student all over again because they're angry and
Mm-hmm.
they're upset, and they have to recognize, teachers have feelings, they get
Of
angry and
course.
they get upset, but they need to be self-aware of how that impacts or what they're doing impacts on students. So I feel like getting our teachers ready, as you say, to be able to provide support to students, there needs to be additional training. It's a different kind. I've
Mm-hmm.
done it before, whereas just a whole training on self awareness for
Mm.
teachers to really be able to understand what they bring to the educational arena and how they impact with students. So I think
So
that that's an important start.
in your estimation, what would you say the frequency of this type of training should be? Yes, we're doing we're providing PD on curriculum based elements, right? Literacy,
Mhm,
math, science, social studies,
mhm,
and equally providing some PD on SEL, how the adult should be able to manage it, see it in the scholars,
mhm.
but then the self. What would you say should be some sort of a frequent? Because I think one of the pitfalls in education is the fact that there's a tendency to do things one and done. You got it at the
Absolutely.
beginning of the year that should sustain you throughout the year, and it's like no, it doesn't
Absolutely.
work that way, right? And
Absolutely.
so yes, we'll do some things on the front end, but what happens in the middle, you know, in the 3/4 point in the year, and then at the end, right? We there has to be some continuity of these things at play throughout the year.
I mean, if I had a magic wand, I'll do it every month. I mean, seriously. But the reality is that teachers are involved in other types of trainings that they have to
Mm-hmm.
participate in as well, and it becomes difficult because you can't really pull a teacher out of a classroom because you'll have to get coverage. So it's difficult to find the time. Sometimes you only have what is it, 30 minutes at the end of the day, and so
Mm-hmm.
then you look for your PD days. They're normally filled with all the responsibilities that teachers are responsible for. So I bring back to you again that Monday time in which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of dedicated needs to be part of that needs to be dedicated to SEL training. Now it can be done quarterly, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the least, at least quarterly. And I think that that would give, teachers, staff, not just teachers, a good opportunity to practice, to
Mm-hmm.
have questions, to revisit, to learn new strategies, to see what
Okay.
works, see what doesn't work. I think that that's important, as well as you have, as I said, social workers in the building that can provide that support in between formal training sessions.
Okay. Okay. So they can take place in PLCs as well, right?
Mhm.
So that again, being intentional with the structure of the schedule and making sure that certain some of these components are embedded on a consistent and routine
Consistent
basis, so
basis.
that becomes part of
Mhm.
the learning and growth for the adults as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
while the actionable strategies are there, change though in these areas, it's got to last beyond the quick fix. How
Mhm.
do we make it last? How do we make it last?
Well, so how do you make SEL last, or how do you make um, teachers consistently practice SEL within the classroom?
I think it's both. It can't be one. They're in tandem, right? It's not something that is one without the other. I think
Mhm.
we are in the state of the educational landscape where both are needed, right? Not only do you need to learn about how to support a scholar, but you also need to learn how to manage your social emotional dynamic, right? So
Mhm.
if you're not able to do that, you will not be a value add for the child, right? Because you won't be able to recognize, as you said, when you bring the child back to the teacher, right?
Right.
They reboot their berating and da, da, da,
Mhm.
da, da, right? And
Mhm.
God forbid
Mhm.
you work at a middle school.
Yes.
Jekyll and Hyde, 8 o'clock, I'm
Yes.
giving you the finger.
Right.
8:15, I want you to give me a hug. And you're looking at them
Right.
like, are you serious? Right?
Right. Absolutely.
so, so,
Absolutely.
so, and one of the things I used to tell our practitioners, that event of that child giving you the finger at 8 o'clock, that was a lifetime ago. They've moved on, but
Right.
as an adult, you're still holding on, right? That's that
Exactly.
emotional component,
Exactly.
letting it
Yes.
go, recognizing that you're dealing with a child and
Right.
that you just happen to be the vessel in front of them that they can lash out at. 9 times out
Right.
of 10, they, you weren't the target, but you just happened to be there, you know. So,
But that's absolutely correct. So what I would say to that is, and it may not sound like it's, something that teachers would like, but I think it needs to be put within their evaluation structure. I think it needs to be part of
oof,
when you I'm just saying. I'm just
I know
saying.
this already started.
They
If
have.
I'm
It
not
has
mistaken, I
because
think that's part of the equation, becoming part of the equation now.
it is becoming part of it because, It's sad to say, but oftentimes people pay attention to what they're required to do and what
Mm.
they're being evaluated on, right?
Hmm.
And what's tied into their employment. I mean, if we're speaking the truth, right? It would be
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
There
But
are
is that
some that
what you
do
really
it.
want?
Well, I'm just
Just
saying.
build a relationship with the child. Just love on them. You really want this to be part of your measuring? Oh man.
I'm just
Whew.
saying. And when I say that, it helps in this way because as you saying, um, when an educator has to then look at themselves and see if they're able to possess the SEL or social emotional skills or the
Mm-hmm.
empathy and all of that. Somebody has to be able to be a mirror to them and say, well, you know what, maybe you need to
Okay.
look at this,
Okay.
right? Because
Oh.
people take the evaluative process as something that is, we're trying to catch you out there, but it's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be a mechanism to support you and to support your growth as an educator, right? So not
Absolutely.
just in the academic piece, but now in the social emotional piece as well.
Mm.
So I feel
Mm.
that that's where we'll get
Well,
it
I
to
think
be
that they're going
something
there
that.
already.
Mhm.
I think Danielson probably has sprinkled that in there a
Uh-huh.
little bit more in this new
Yes.
edition, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yes,
Right.
I believe you are correct.
So, whew, yeah,
That's where we're going.
wow.
And yeah.
That changes the landscape a little bit,
It
right?
does.
And
It does.
I think it forces individuals because now you can't just keep thinking about I had a four, I had a three, I got my fours and threes
Mhm.
because I did X, Y, and Z. But now
Mhm.
that building of rapport and relation, even though building rapport is part of the evaluation process, right? I think looking at it from an SEL lens takes it to another level. Wow.
It does.
Wow. Wow.
It does. I'm excited
Ah,
for
I'm
it.
I'm excited for it too, but hey, if I were in the neighborhood, I'd probably be more excited. But anyway, what are some of the trends and realities that you see shaping the future of SEL in schools, especially in school support and their scholars post pandemic?
Well, what I have seen is that we have a lot of new mental health agencies that
Okay,
are developing partnerships with schools
good.
to provide telehealth services to students
Mm,
who are struggling with mental health issues and
okay,
also providing those services to families. So, the whole
nice.
telehealth thing came about after the pandemic. So
Right.
now we've become more accustomed to even having our doctor's appointments for telehealth,
That's
and
true.
and
That's
any
true.
right,
That's true.
right. So now this is part of the landscape. This is something that is new and something that now we're really starting to see some schools partner with mental health agencies to provide that support to students even while they're in school.
So when you look at where we've worked in your more urban locations, right? A lot of our scholars coming into the building come with all kinds of things. And sometimes
Hmm.
the adults that are there to support them as well, right?
Hmm.
Do you see, because I think one of the conversations I had with you was how do you, as a single social worker, deal with scholars traumas when they flare up, right? And so as a singular individual in the building, I have 5 kids waiting for you,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And you got to do the Burger King drive-through version of things because the lighting of candles and the incense and the Zen space, it's difficult to have that in the educational setting.
It is
Right?
difficult.
Even though I've been around for individuals who've tried to make that a thing and it created friction between them and their colleagues because, like, listen, there are 30 kids waiting.
Right.
you can't just take one and we got to get address it and keep it moving. So that's a
Right.
challenge that schools have. So
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
can we make that uh what do we call it?
Telehealth.
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 Thank you. I
Yeah.
just drew a
No
blank. My
worries.
seniority
It's
is kicking
okay.
in.
That's all right. I'm there with you.
All right. How can we make telehealth more prevalent and really something that we can tap into a little quicker or a little bit more for scholars? But of course, I know saying this means also restructuring what the instructional day looks like to
Right.
be able to facilitate and support this type of thing.
Well, currently, I'm working with a company that's attempting to pilot that kind of a program, at
Okay.
least within our district. So, in working with that kind of program, it actually frees up the social worker
Mm,
because you'll have a student, say a student may be having issues, and you know that you want to provide this kind of service, whereas once parents sign off on approval of it to
right.
provide this kind of therapy within school, the social worker will then schedule a student, schedule them for this session.
Mm-hmm.
And the session is not with the social worker, the session is through telehealth, right? So
Right.
that's a separate session, so they're not involved or tied up in that. They're making sure that the student is taken care of in terms of their being in a private space and someone within earshot, so the student is not completely off in some
Mm-hmm.
corner by themselves,
Right.
but
Right.
is
Right.
able to provide those services and then ensuring that they then go back to class and even processing with them that session. Now, speaking to what you were talking about prior in terms of having like a line of students waiting to see you
Mm-hmm.
because you're the only social worker, the only thing that you can do is triage, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're assessing quickly, seeing exactly what's going on. If it's a situation where as you're having somebody with suicidal ideations or self-harm, that takes on a different form. Other students have to wait. You have to
Right.
kind of balance to see what's a priority, right? And then of course, then you follow up with a lot of referrals and parent calls and things of that nature to make sure that a student is followed. So it is difficult to provide that kind of focused service if
Right.
you are the only social worker in a school with a litany of students that have needs, right?
Okay.
But partnering with an agency that is able to provide that kind of service
Mm-hmm.
definitely helps. I believe that districts need to realize that they need to hire more social workers to
Mm-hmm.
help address many of the issues that are in the school because our students need the service. Other
Absolutely.
than that, we tend to refer out. We follow up, but we refer out and then we triage when you only have, limited resources.
With respect to the external referral, have you found that to be uh, an effective thing? Because I know that what I remember, oftentimes the agencies had difficult time either connecting with the family or the
Hmm.
individual in question, or the agency doesn't do their part, right? And so the
Hmm.
parents are like, we've been waiting for them. So you have this narrative out there that makes it difficult for the external referrals. What can schools, I guess, on one hand, do, and what can parents do to ensure that once that connection is made, they the follow through happens and the services are rendered?
So what happens in those situations? This is the reason why a lot of these agencies has popped up in terms of trying to provide this service to schools
Mm,
because their waiting period is extremely long.
mm-hmm,
You have students that need services that are not receiving it in time. The follow up for many of these agencies or many of these referrals um, is not good at all.
mm,
Parents have a difficult time following up. A lot of parents sometimes need help from the school social workers to follow up because they really don't know how to properly access the system. to be
Right.
able to provide that support for their children. So it does become very difficult when you refer out. Now, on the other hand, when social workers do referrals, they follow up. You know, they're the ones that will tend to follow up with the parents and follow up with the referring agency. But oftentimes, because of the lag and the long wait to
Wait.
get services, it becomes a problem. And also, you know, depending on where you live, you
Mm-hmm.
know, some counties and towns have a lot of resources and some do
Yeah.
not,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so it becomes, you know, very important for the schools to be able to try and assist in that area. And that's, as I said, when you get, like I said, those partnerships where they can try and provide that resource for students in school, because transportation also becomes an issue,
Right.
because sometimes you'll refer and the parents can't get
They can't get there.
to, or they work shifts and they're not available because they're working all day or they're working two jobs night and day, and then they can't get their child to the particular services that they need.
And with respect to that too, what would you do? You believe that in your urban centers where minority and socioeconomically challenged settings, you find that there's also a kind of an aversion to therapy, right? Yeah, we don't need that. Kwame is just being Kwame, you know. He's just
Mhm,
a knucklehead and he'll
mhm.
be all right. He don't need
Yeah.
that, right? So that's that, that frowning upon counseling and
Mhm.
therapy, how you find that to be part of the equation as well.
Yes, you do find that, and that's when the skill of a social worker plays
Mm,
in, because you have to slowly take a person who is reluctant to counseling to try and move the needle. And it's
mm-hmm,
very difficult. It doesn't work
mm-hmm.
all the time, but
Right.
oftentimes when you take time to explain because at the end of the day, parents really want to see their children
Mm,
well,
right.
healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and cared for. And so when you tap into that piece, oftentimes they change their mind.
But you got some difficult ones, right? He
Yes, you
don't need
do.
it.
Yes,
He
you
don't
do.
need it. He just a bad behind kid, blah, blah, blah.
Right,
And it's like,
right,
Ma, come on now. He's crying
yeah,
out for help. The
right,
behaviors he's exhibiting are his way of saying, I need help, right? But our children don't know how to come out and say, I need help. They
right.
oftentimes act out. They oftentimes
And
act out.
oftentimes some of those parents need help themselves.
Mm,
So when you
mm.
get the history and you find out exactly what's going on within the household and a parent's particular background and history, you'll find that they often need that support as well.
Oh, wow. Wow. I want to, have our last component and then take us to see what kind of comments have been popping up on the radar. See if anything we can address, right? Because I know I
Okay.
saw a thumbs up flying across the corner of my eye earlier. But in terms of just trying to wrap up a little bit or get into that stage, uh, I love the conversation. I love the insights you've given us. What would you advise new school counselors to the neighborhood of education, right? Because
Mm,
if your private practice is private practice, that's
mhm,
a different ball game. If you're a
mhm,
social worker or even a school counselor coming into the
mhm,
field of education for the
mhm,
first time, or you're going into your second year, you're still somewhat of a novice in the landscape. What would be some
mhm,
advice that you give these practitioners so that they can make good use of one their time, scheduling, and being able to address the workload? Because I know that used to be one of the things that we fought to get a second counselor because,
Mhm.
listen, one person can't do this, right? You got
Right.
500 kids, if
Right.
or in buildings where you have more, but you need four and you only got two.
Right.
That's a problem. So, what advice would you can you give those incoming folks who are going to be dealing with our lovely scholars?
Well, first of all, I would definitely advise for new social workers or new school counselors to work closely with their administrators as well,
Mm-hmm.
because oftentimes they tend to work in silo. They feel like they're by themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't share exactly what's going on in terms of the
Right.
workload. So they really have to be honest and upfront with that. It's also important for them to learn how to make spaces in their day. I used to
Okay.
tell some of the social workers all the time, it's difficult for them to schedule because they don't really work on a typical schedule. So they
Right.
have to leave spaces that they can move things around that they may have scheduled, but they have to be able to, what didn't work, in the morning because they had an emergency, then they have to then move it down to a later time of the day.
Right.
So just to be careful in terms of trying to learn how to schedule your day. Also, make sure, like when you first come in, go to all the classes, introduce yourself, be visible. Let the teachers know who you are. Let the students know who you are. This is
Mm-hmm.
who I am. This is where you can find me. This is what I offer. Be in connection with the parents as well. Let them know what resources that they can get from you. Make sure that you're knowledgeable about the resources in your area, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're going to really depend on, especially if you have a large amount of students that have a need. You really need to be able to plug into the various resources within your community. So you have to be knowledgeable of that as well. So I
And
would
what
say
what
just, yes, go ahead.
where else can they see their scholars in action?
You trying to set me up.
I'm not setting you up. It's a conversation. We're keeping it real. Look,
I mean,
because
they can see them
sometimes
in
when they show up
action.
to your doorstep, you are clueless, right?
Well, you can definitely see them in action in the cafeteria.
There you go.
I know,
Step into
I
that
know.
space. Step into that space because you get to see your frequent flyers or even non-frequent flyers and see how they engage or handle themselves right within that large space.
Yes,
Chaos,
yes,
noise, right?
yes.
And you'll get a good sense of the dynamics of your scholars that are at play. Listen,
That is true. But what's also important, I like to add this, is that definitely be in contact with your security officers.
mm-hmm,
They oftentimes see
that's the
things
scoop.
that a lot of people don't see, and they have information that a lot of people won't know. So definitely,
Yes,
they're a resource for you as well.
absolutely. Shout out to our security officers in the
Yes,
buildings across the country.
absolutely. Yes,
They do a yeoman's job,
yes.
because they have ways they connect with scholars and are able
Right.
to get intel that most adults won't get their hands on. So yes,
Exactly.
yes, yes.
Exactly.
Mrs. Patricia King-Gibbs, we are at the 518 mark. I want to make sure that our audience. I checked the uh, comment section. I didn't see anything. Maybe I'm missing something. But if it's whew, 25, 26, right? I'm going to ask as a closing inquiry, what's
Okay.
one step any teacher, school leader, or school can take tomorrow to better support their scholars' social emotional learning?
Well, the first step, as always, as I said, is to prioritize relationships. To
Mm,
begin with trusting activities to get the school students connected, because that's really going to impact on everything. That even impacts on attendance, because if a student doesn't feel like they belong, right,
mm,
they don't necessarily want to be there, and if they're not there, you can't provide education for them. So I
absolutely.
I feel that the first step is that they really need to have teachers, administrators, and everybody prioritize those relationships, as
Mm-hmm.
well as, do daily check-ins, engage families,
Mm.
all of those things that can build the climate and culture of your school.
Yes. Yes. Mrs. King-Gibbs, it's been a pleasure engaging you in this chat. Um, thank you. Thank you for sharing your expertise and insights. For our listeners, remember when schools care for the hearts and minds of scholars, academic growth follows, right? If you
Absolutely.
enjoyed the conversation, subscribe to At the Desk with Dr. Qua. Absolutely do share this episode with someone who believes, like we do, that education is about teaching the whole child. So, with that, how can our folks touch base with you? Should the need arise? Should they have an inquiry? Should they feel, you know what? I like that sister. I like her flow, right? As a good friend of ours said, whenever Pat walks into the room, she gonna start counseling. So everybody start, when you hear her go, uh-huh, you don't say. That means you're being assessed, okay? How can our people get in touch with you should the need arise?
Sure, you can email me at pkinggibbs at outlook.com.
And that information is also in the description of this episode. At the bottom, you can touch base with Mrs. King-Gibbs. And if you need to touch base with yours truly, my information is also there as well. Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. To our guests out there and our followers, thank you for continuing to stick with us. I think this might have been our first episode glitch free. I think, right? So we'll take it. We'll take it. I think we're ending a little early, but thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you being part of this conversation. We'll see you next week with another episode. Mrs. King-Gibbs, have a terrific 2026, 25, 26 school year. And I'm
Thank you.
sure I owe you lunch at some point.
Thank you. And I'll take you up on it.
There you go. All be
Take care.
well. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye.
Bye bye.